Welcome to the 2010 Network Intermission podcast, presented to you by the Oregon Ministry Network. Network Intermission took place January 25th through 27th at the Seaside Convention Center. The following breakout session was led by Nathan Davis.
We're going to talk a little bit about depression and burnout, and most pastors will almost talk with pride about having burnout, but will be embarrassed about depression. So we're going to talk a little bit about what are some of the symptoms and what's the difference. First of all, let's talk a little bit about what is depression and burnout. And I want to start off with some of the initial cues, and these come from the American Psychological Association, and they're called DSM-4 diagnostic criteria. I use this acronym, acrostic you might say, to identify some of the symptoms. You won't find this in the diagnostic manual, but this is Nathan Davis's version of what's in the diagnostic manual. First thing you look for is a sleep disturbance. And as you have a sleep disturbance, that means normally what's going to be different for you, you'll have a change, or the individual person who's having a problem with burnout or depression will have a change in sleep patterns. So for instance, if you normally sleep 8 hours a night, a person who's having difficulty with sleep will either not sleep as soundly as normal, or they might sleep 2 or 3 hours a night, or 4 hours a night, or maybe sometimes extraordinarily long, like 12 or 13 hours a night. So it's changing what's normal, a disturbance in their sleep, either insomnia or hypersomnia, a change. The second thing you look for is psychomotor retardation. In other words, your body slows down. Typically, an individual who is burned out, they will talk much slower, and they will also talk much softer than what's normal for them. Or sometimes during a stressful time, they'll speed up and be talking like in a New York minute, like someone who lives in New York City, even though they live here in Dallas, Oregon. And so when you see a person who's talking differently than normal, they may walk a lot slower or faster. You may watch your husband or spouse or wife and notice that it takes them 2 or 3 times longer to get dressed in the morning. That's a change in their psychomotor activity. Their body is slowing up or slowing down, speeding up or slowing down. Appetite change, and you'll see a sudden gain in weight or loss in weight. You ask someone concentration. Concentration will be an issue, and they won't be able to focus. They'll commonly have a problem with reading, because they can't concentrate long enough or deeply enough to read. They may take out a book or newspaper and read a paragraph 3 or 4 times, trying to understand something that's normally simple for them to understand. Energy often is something that they'll report that they have very little energy, or sometimes huge amounts of energy if they're really stressed. Now, I've had people come to me and they may say, "Man, I sleep 3 or 4 hours a night now, and since this event, and I have huge amounts of energy. I can do anything. It's wonderful." They're still depressed. They're actually having an anxiety disorder in that case, linked to depression. And when that adrenaline wears off, guess what's going to happen? They're going to crash really bad. It's still burnout and depression. So a change in energy, often a loss of energy, will be the major problem. They'll tell me, "I don't have energy to prepare my sermons anymore. I don't have an energy to do my missionary work anymore." They'll have guilt, and there's what I call appropriate and inappropriate guilt. And often the person will feel guilty for something that's totally inappropriate. Let me go ahead and close this so you can see that easier. Is that better? And so they'll have guilt. And there's a difference between appropriate and inappropriate guilt. If you are drinking and driving, you hit a kid and kill a kid, you'll have guilt, and I'd say that's probably appropriate. Most of you haven't done that. And most missionaries have not done that. But instead, they'll feel guilty over something that's inappropriate that they have no control over. If you have appropriate guilt, what do we do with it? We take it to the cross, and we get forgiven, and then what happens? It's inappropriate. We get rid of it. As Christians, we have a way of dealing with our guilt. Non-Christians don't. For Christians, most of our guilt becomes inappropriate because we give it to God. We get forgiven, and from that point on, it becomes inappropriate. A loss of interest in the things that you normally would find joy and pleasure in life. So, for me, I love playing table tennis. I love photography. That I don't like doing either one of those things. Beth knows something's wrong. I don't know about you, but there's certain things that you naturally enjoy doing in life. And when you lose that joy, that's a big red flag. Or suicidal thoughts, and often people think of suicidal thoughts as being the sole indicator of depression or burnout. No, it's only one of many. There's actually 100 or more other indicators besides these, but these are the big 8 that come in the diagnostic manual. And if you just use this acronym acrostic, SPACE GIs: sleep, psychomotor activity, appetite, concentration, energy, guilt, interest, and suicidal thoughts. It's an easy way for you to check yourself. And as the people in your church come to you and want pastoral counseling, you can determine whether or not this person needs to be referred to a counselor, or whether it's appropriate just to talk to them on a pastoral level. Because if they have 4 or more of these symptoms, and have those symptoms for more than about 2 weeks, the American Psychological Association will tell you that they're burned out and depressed. Which comes to the next major question: what's the difference between burnout and depression? Bottom line, there's no difference. The only difference is the source. A jillion things can cause depression. Burnout is only one of those. But a burned out person, a burned out pastor, is depressed. That's the bottom line. Burnout is only one of a million different sources of things that cause depression. When you're talking about burnout, the short of it is the person is depressed. And as we went down through that list, you probably were able to say, well, looking back through those 8 items, I experienced 4 or more of those when this happened. And you can identify a period where you went through a cycle in which you experienced depression, and that's normal. Almost every American at some point, over half of the Americans, will experience depression sometime during their life as a normal cycle. What's the risk for pastors? And that's the big gotcha. What causes depression? Negative events in life: loss, failure, moves, trauma. About 90% of the people who experience trauma caused by another individual experience depression. That's a normal cause. And the big gotcha for pastors is vicarious experiences. And this is what's mostly unrecognized among pastors and makes you much more susceptible than the average American. When an individual in your church comes to you and they've had an auto accident, their child has gotten pregnant, or whatever crisis goes in their life, and you as a pastor now counsel them, doing pastoral counseling, you experience their trauma. And it's the most unrecognized source of crisis and stress, I think, in being a pastor. When you do pastoral counseling for someone else in your church, you also experience that. The average American will go through a major crisis once every 10 or 15 years. How often do you counsel someone in your church who's going through a crisis? Once a week? Once every 2 weeks? The bottom line is that by the time you have experienced 3 crises, you're 4 times more likely to experience burnout. That's the way this formula works. And if you have worked in a church for more than a month, you probably have already experienced 3 or more crises vicariously through those in your congregation. So that what I'm trying to say is that if you as a pastor are doing your job correctly, burnout is not a failure. Burnout is a normal result of you doing a good job. Because if you're doing a good job and really doing pastoral counseling like Jesus did, He didn't give it to someone else. He took it on. If you're doing pastoral counseling like your job says you need to do it, you become the first line responder. You will vicariously experience the crises of everyone in your congregation and even in your community. And the normal result is that if you don't do some intervention, you will experience burnout. It just takes a matter of time. It'll eventually catch up with you. You're not superhuman. God made you with a human body. The normal result is this is not a failure. This is actually a success marker of being a good pastor. Hopefully we can equip you with something that will help you prevent it. Because with modern science, this can be prevented. No individual needs to go through burnout or depression. Any question about this? I wanted to first of all dispel the myth that burnout and depression are a failure. They are not a failure. That is not a failure. That is simply an indication you've been doing your job correctly. You may not have been doing some of the things to prevent burnout that you could be doing. But many pastors across the United States, because the research is so recent in this area, have no clue what to do. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What are your questions about this before we go on? Because this is so critical. Yes?
About the whole list or just what you're talking about now?
The whole list, yeah.
Okay. First off, I got two questions. What's rumination?
We're going to get into that later, yes.
Okay. And then depression history. So if you've been depressed once, does that mean you're more likely to be depressed?
Right. If you have previous history of depression, or if you're female, can you change that? Probably not. We hope you don't try to. I guess with modern science, some of you can't you? We hope you don't. If you're female, you're more prone to depression. If you have previous history of depression, you're more prone to depression. If genetically, there are genetic indicators that make you more prone to depression. These things are not changeable. The things that are changeable are all these things, the four top one and rumination. Those things are changeable. And things you can do something about. The bottom things, you're pretty well stuck with them. What other questions do you have about what we have up here? Good. Let's go back then. And let's talk a little bit about what do you do to prevent this. Hopefully you're all terrified saying, man, I didn't realize I was so susceptible to this. Bottom line is that the research that's come out in the last 10 years is turning the whole industry of counseling and psychology on its ear. Because now, for the most part, this is preventable. And previously it wasn't. It'd be the normal result of trauma and crisis and your vicarious experiences, and you would experience it and then you could seek medication and counseling. But now, for the most part, this is preventable. And what's preventable about it are lifestyle choices. There are many lifestyle choices that will give you resilience to prevent burnout and depression. We can't talk about them all this morning. I gave you a handout with 6 of them, and we're going to try and get down through some of those today. Okay, let's talk about first one here. Top of the list, exercise. How much did Adam and Eve exercise every day? When did they start exercising? Probably shortly after getting up. After what kind of work did they do?
Gardening.
They did gardening. Was it a small garden or a big garden?
Pretty good size.
Probably pretty good size. We don't know. The Bible doesn't really say, but God does things in a pretty big way. So my guess is that it's a pretty big garden. And so, how much walking did they probably do during the day? Probably a lot. What all is involved in gardening? Digging, shoveling, planting, carrying, all kind of strenuous things, right? So, Adam and Eve, we don't really know, but modern anthropologists are telling us that Adam and Eve, the prehistoric mankind, they estimate actually exercise at the level of today's elite marathon runners. in excess of 4 hours a day. Where do most of you work? Behind a computer, just like me. Yeah, exactly. So where does that leave most of us as pastors and ministers in comparison to Adam and Eve? We get a lot less, right? The bottom line is that depression or burnout is depression. Depression may not be burnout, but burnout is depression. Is actually nothing more than the lack of some 4 key chemicals in the brain, 2 of which are serotonin and norepinephrine. So without these chemicals, your brain slows down. You cannot take a pill to get these chemicals. The chemicals are produced in your brain only, and there are lifestyle choices that will produce and stimulate your brain to start producing those 2 chemicals in particular. Those are 2 primary. There's other chemicals also. But the bottom line is that without serotonin and norepinephrine, which are chemicals that relay signals down your brain fibers, your brain will slow down. And slow down to the point that you now do everything slower. That's why you had psychomotor retardation up there. That's why concentration and energy is lost, because you do not have enough chemicals in your brain to work normally. Amazingly, when you exercise more than about 20 minutes a day, somewhere around that, it varies by individuals, sometimes it's 17 minutes, but sometimes somewhere between 17 and 20 minutes, when you exercise aerobically, guess what starts happening inside your brain? It starts producing serotonin and norepinephrine, the very chemicals you need. The very chemicals that Adam and Eve had plenty of supply of because their day had lots of exercise. The very chemical that most Americans have very little of because we sit behind computers and behind office desks. 100 years ago, no one had to worry about this. Most Americans, walked behind a plow and worked on a farm and worked very hard lives. But most of us, ministers in particular, sit at an office desk, writing sermons, counseling, planning. We don't have that kind of an office, that kind of an environment like Adam and Eve. God did not design mankind to sit behind a desk. He designed people like Adam and Eve. Exercise. The evidence shows that it's equivalent to anti-anxiety medication. That alone is equivalent. I'll skip some of this. So basically, if you are not exercising, but you are doing your job correctly of doing pastoral counseling, you are reducing your margin against burnout, and you are making yourself susceptible. You are really violating what God has given you, your body. And so I'm trying to put guilt on you. One of those indicators of depression and burnout. When you don't have enough, when you are burned out or depressed, what happens in your brain? Well, first thing that happens is your brain reduces its output and manufactures serotonin and norepinephrine. Your motivation is produced in your frontal cortex, up here in the front part of your brain. If you're right-handed, it's the left-hand side. If you're left-handed, it's the right-hand side. But it's up in the front part of your brain. Front part of your brain gets the least amount of serotonin. So when you are burned out, the front part of your brain is not functioning at full capacity. What else happens in the front part of your brain? Well, the front part of your brain is where motivation is produced. And so commonly when a person is burned out, you can talk to them and they'll tell you they don't feel motivated to do pastoral work anymore. And I'll talk about the exercise and I'll say, yes, I want to exercise. But without motivation, they can't. Without serotonin, they know all this. They can understand it and intend to exercise. But because they don't have serotonin in the brain, an adequate supply, the next morning they'll get up and they cannot exercise. They cannot, because their brain will not produce the serotonin to produce a motivation. That's the way this works. It becomes really critical for you as a pastor to have an exercise partner. Someone that can get you up off that chair, behind that computer, and get you outside that door doing some exercise. Because once your brain is producing an inadequate supply, you will not be able to produce the motivation to do it yourself. When you need accountability partners and exercise partners to help us do what God wants us to do.
I've got a question.
Yes.
So let's say you haven't been exercising. I don't know who that might be.
I have no idea.
So let's say you start your 20 minutes a day. How long is it going to take to get the machine running right?
Well, let's talk about the 20 minutes a day. At 20 minutes, your brain clicks in and starts producing serotonin. If you stop at 20 minutes, how much serotonin do you get? 0. If you exercise 25, what do you get? 5 minutes worth. So that's the start point starts at 20 minutes. And so we tell missionaries, and I'm telling you, exercise at least 45 minutes a day.
Is that all have to be at one time? In a row?
And yes, it does need to be at one time. For other reasons it may not, but for serotonin, you need to get that initial 20 minutes out of the way before your brain starts. So yes, it needs to be, for serotonin purposes, you need to have at least 40 to 45 minutes every day. Now, I say 5 days a week, not every single day, but 5 days a week, yes.
Being on your feet, moving around. Is that
not aerobic.
Okay.
Needs to be aerobic. Walking, unless you're walking fast, is not aerobic. So it needs to be aerobic exercise. So find an accountability partner, if your spouse or whoever, give them permission to get you motivated. And then when they make you accountable, don't get mad at them. Realize you gave them permission for that. Every person needs an accountability partner, because if you're in ministry, you will go through normal ups and downs and a cycle of depression when someone comes to you, or you had a whole series of people coming to you. That's normal. What we want you to do is build resilience so that cycle is very short. We want you to have a margin of serotonin and norepinephrine, so that cycle will be short and you'll recover very quickly. Exercise regularly, at least 30 minutes. I usually say 40, 45. Get your heart rate up, 120 to 140 beats depending on your age. If you're my age, maybe 120 is fine, but if you're younger like Lonnie, you can go up to 140 probably. Cartoon says, I was going to wake up early to go jogging, but my toes voted against me 10 to 1. Okay. Start off with a checkup before starting exercise. Some people cannot for reasons, so I want you to make sure you get a checkup. Oh, let me go back. I do recommend this particular book, Faith-Based Fitness. If you're starting an exercise program, it's very good. It'll give you a way to start a fitness program for exercise. And you can get that on Barnes & Noble or Borders.com or Amazon.com. It's available. It's like $12 or $15, so it's not going to break the bank. But it's a good place for you to start. Okay, exercise. Let's go to the next one. Sunlight. What time did Adam and Eve probably get up in the morning?
5 a.m.
Probably when it got light. If around the Tigris or Euphrates, it's down closer to the equator, so they probably got up fairly early. What time did they go to bed?
7.
Probably when it got dark. About how many hours would that have been around the Tigris or Euphrates, probably, on an average?
12.
Pretty close to 12. It varied a little bit, but not as much as it does here. But probably at least 10 hours a night. Sometimes as much as 12. So they, or a day, that's how much sunlight they got. How much sunlight do you get?
This is Oregon.
When Adam and Eve got up, did they stay in a cave, or where did they go to get sunlight? What did they do all day long? They were outside, weren't they? So how much sunlight did they get outside? What's the brightness out there? Anyone? It's about 10,000 foot lamberts. I work in an office behind a computer with fluorescent lights. That's about 100 foot lamberts. If I spend 24 hours and never sleep, if I spend 24 hours in my office, I still haven't gotten the sunlight that Adam and Eve got in 1 hour. If you're like me, you spend most of your day in the office. Indoor office, somewhere between 40 and 500, usually around 100-foot Lamberts. Outside, around 10,000. When you spend time outside, somewhere at around 30 minutes, your brain kicks in, and guess what it starts producing? The very chemicals that you need. God did not design man and woman to live inside in front of a computer all day.
But could we skip exercise and buy a really good lamp?
Great question. Absolutely.
What if you walk when it's dark outside, like early before sunrise? Does that still count as your outside time?
Well, there's a big problem. Those who live in northern climates like Oregon and Seattle and northern Europe, and it's drizzly in the wintertime, isn't it? And it's overcast. And so how much you can be outside, and how much sunlight do you get? What's a foot Lambert at? It's going to be pretty dim. The reality is that in northern climates they have what's called seasonal affective disorder, SAD, which is a type of depression caused by not getting enough, guess what? Sunlight. This is easily remedied. One of the easier things you can remedy if you live in Oregon or northern climate. Buy a light box. You can get them on the internet. A good one that's fairly good size is going to cost you $150 to $200. And you can set it in your office or in your kitchen and turn it on. And in as little as 30 minutes, you'll get enough sunlight to start your brain producing serotonin, the very thing you need. You as ministers need more of this than the average American because of the vicarious type of things you're experiencing through your congregations. You need more serotonin. You need a margin that average Americans don't need. You are at risk. There's a reason why ministers have a high burnout rate. Yes?
Well, I've known for some time that I have light deprivation in the wintertime. In fact,
oh, absolutely.
I installed a timer in my room so the light would come on in the morning to help me to be able to wake up. But I didn't realize it was because there was a chemical that wasn't being produced. Absolutely, very important. My parents, when I came back from, I was raised as an MK, would come back to Seattle. So when I came to Oregon to itinerate, one December, I went up to Seattle to be with my parents, and I joked with my wife. I spent in 1 month. I felt like I spent a whole year up there because it was so dark, drizzly and dark. And by the end of the month, I said, I don't want to ever go back to Seattle. I felt very depressed because it was just drizzly and gray and overcast the entire month. You're human. And if you're human and you don't spend enough time outdoors and get enough sunlight, this is the way your body's going to respond.
Does this light come in through your eyes?
Yes, it comes in through your eyes. Now, you're going to get vitamin D through your skin, but that's not what I'm talking about. Vitamin D is very important. I'm talking about stimulating your brain to produce serotonin. If you wear sunglasses, it's not going to work. You need brightness on your eyes. Now, I've heard people say, well, I'm very fair-skinned and I have susceptibility to skin cancer. Well, good. Wear skin block. Wear long-sleeve shirts. Do whatever you can to protect your skin. But you still need to get out in that bright sunlight to stimulate your brain to produce serotonin and norepinephrine. Okay, any questions about sunlight? Okay, we're going through this pretty quickly. I'm going to skip on down. About what time did Adam and Eve go to bed?
9 o'clock.
When it got dark. What time did they get up? When it got light. About how many hours was that? Probably 10 to 12 hours if down around the Tigris and Euphrates area. And so they got 10 to 12 hours. How many hours a night of sleep do you get as pastors? Average North American, according to the National Sleep Foundation, sleeps about 6.7 hours a night, and they're proud of it. Most pastors sleep less than that and are extremely proud of it. They say, I have a Protestant work ethic, they call it. Nothing to be proud of because you're using up your serotonin. When is serotonin primarily produced while you sleep, while you have deep sleep. So when you sleep less than 8 hours a night, which is about what mankind was designed to sleep, all you're doing is making yourself susceptible to burnout, depression. You're decreasing your margin. Nothing to be proud about. When you abuse your sleep, you're making yourself susceptible to depression. Target yourself to get at least 8 hours of sleep a night. These are some ideas that you can do to try and increase your sleep, because a lot of people have insomnia. A lot of Americans do. Caffeine. Your body continues to process caffeine. The midlife of caffeine in your body is about 7 hours. So at 7 hours after drinking that cup of coffee, it's still working. It's still half of it's there working in your body. So if you have a sleep problem, don't drink caffeine in the afternoon. Make sure you quit by mid-morning. Get a white noise generator. Don't talk about conflicting issues with your spouse before going to bed. That's going to keep you awake. No food right before bed, because that gets your body working on the food. I tell people, wind down. No TV. TV before bedtime gets your mind working, especially if it's a suspense type show, detective type show. Gets your mind working and you can't turn it off. Get the TV out of the bedroom. Keep the bed for sleep. Keep the bed for two things only: sleep and sex with your spouse. Research shows that sex with your spouse does not interfere with sleep. All the guys are saying hooray.
Amen.
If you watch TV in bed, you're allowing your body to get in the habit of doing something else in bed besides what it's designed to do. Don't read in bed. Don't watch TV in bed. Keep the bed for what it's intended for. And your body will be trained that when it lays down, it knows it's time to go to sleep, and not time to read, not time to watch TV, not time to do anything else.
Can I have a cookie with a glass of milk?
What kind of food did Adam and Eve eat? Mostly vegetables, right? That's what it says. How much fast food did they have? How much did they eat grain-fed pork and grain-fed beef? Zero. Whatever they ate, they didn't eat that at all. How about Noah? No one could eat meat until the time of Noah. How much grain-fed meat did Noah eat? You may say, why on earth are you picking on grain-fed? Because of omega-3. Basically, seeds build up and increase the amount of omega-6 in beef and cattle and pork. And North Americans generally will have about a 16-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. Why is omega-3 so important? Basically because the serotonin and norepinephrine your brain needs to produce are built on the molecule of omega-3 to start with. So it doesn't matter how much you exercise or how much you sleep. If you're not getting enough omega-3, guess what? You're not going to have enough serotonin or norepinephrine. It's made from that molecule to start with. North Americans consume a lot of omega-6, especially in fast food. Omega-6 ties up the enzymes that produce or that process omega-3. So our bodies were not designed to handle fast food. God did not design us that way. He did not design us to handle a large volume of omega-6. And as we abuse our body with fast food and high portions of omega-6, we make ourselves susceptible to burnout and depression only because of the things we eat. This is probably the easiest thing to correct. I tell missionaries and pastors, all you need to do is take an omega-6 or omega-3 supplement as little as 1,000 milligrams a day will help boost you back up to that 1-to-1 ratio that anthropologists are saying prehistoric mankind had. And in fact, even nowadays, if you go to Papua New Guinea, places like that, where there's no fast food, guess what? Their blood will show about a 1-to-1 ratio. It's only in the developing nations like America and other developing countries where the ratio is so totally out of whack. And we make ourselves susceptible to burnout by what we eat or don't eat. Okay, someone said, what on earth is rumination? It's getting on down, isn't it? Okay, rumination is what a cow does. It'll chew grass, it'll go down to its stomach, it'll sit there for a little while, and the cow will cough it back up, and it'll chew it all over again. Now, how do we humans do that? What are some ways we do that same thing?
Someone says something to us, and we think about it for 16, 14, 18 days after.
Exactly, yeah. Someone will say something negative to us. We'll put it in the back of our mind, let it sit there for a few hours, a few days, and we'll bring it up, and we'll chew it all over again and think about it. Put it back here, then bring it back up and chew it all over. And so we'll ruminate like a cow over some negative event again and again, sometimes for months and years. And some of us have been there or have relatives who have been there. How many negative things did Adam and Eve ruminate about? They probably had a pretty idyllic life, even though they worked very hard, very diligently. They probably didn't ruminate. We have no evidence of rumination. How much do you ruminate as pastors about the negative things going on in your church and your congregation? It really got quiet, didn't it?
Cain ruminated.
Cain ruminated, absolutely. Hallmark symptom of depression and a burnout. It happens when you're alone and idle most. There are certain things that will break this cycle, and that's what pastors really need, because you're going to hear so many negative things that are going on in your congregation. It's very easy to get focused on those and not be able to turn those off. I'm going to ask you, how do you feel about breaking one of the 10 Commandments? Not very good, do you? What's the longest commandment of all the commandments?
Not covet.
No.
Keep the Sabbath holy.
Keep the Sabbath holy. He goes on and on about it, God does, about, making sure your manservant and your maidservant doesn't work, and people who are visiting you and inside your gates. And he goes, there's more words about that one commandment than any other commandment. It's probably, I think, the one commandment we ministers violate the most. We don't take a break from our work. There's a great psychologist named Csikszentmihalyi, a Polish psychologist, who coined the word flow. Flow is any activity that breaks rumination. It's an activity that you get so tied into that you cannot focus on ruminating. I told you I like to play table tennis. Believe me, when I'm trying to hit and focus on hitting that ball, I cannot think about the missionary's needs, or about your needs, or my wife's needs, or anyone else's needs, or I'm going to miss that ball. For me, table tennis is flow. I'm totally engaged in that activity. It's as if nothing else exists. It breaks any rumination I have. God gave each of you interests in life that are unique to you, and if you violate those interests and fail to pursue them, you will not have flow. You will not be able to break your rumination. Your interest may not be table tennis. It may be fly fishing. It may be sewing. I knew a missionary male, one of my friends, who loves to knit. Great flow activity. I don't know what God has given you an interest in, but those are God-given interests that are flow activities. And I'm going to encourage each of you to follow those as if your ministry depends on it, because it does. Without flow activities, you will not break rumination. You will ruminate because that's the way we humans are made. We think about the negative. Biblical meditation is an excellent flow activity. Take some scripture and meditate on it. Exercise is good. A lot of exercises you cannot, like playing table tennis, a lot of sports, you cannot focus on the ball or whatever it is you're doing and ruminate at the same time. So there's many things that will break that. They're unique to you. They're tied up in what you find pleasure and fun and interest in naturally, inherently. And what God has gifted you with in that is different than what He's gifted me in. Follow those, pursue those as interests and as ways of having a Sabbath for yourself. Okay. Social support, probably the most important. We're out of time, so I'm just going to get on through that. Let's see. Okay. How effective is this? Well, this is kind of hard for you to understand. But basically, what the University of Kansas did, they took these 6 lifestyles, had a wait list of people who were moderately depressed that they did nothing with, took another group of 45 individuals, took them through 8 sessions, 1-week sessions, of trying to do these 6 lifestyles. Within 8 weeks, over 70% of the individuals eliminated over half of the symptoms. They were no longer moderately depressed within as little as 8 weeks. No medication. All they did was follow these 8 lifestyles, which basically are in the Bible to start with. Of those who completed, it was a little bit better. But the bottom line, they were able to show that in as little as 2 months, they were able to take 70% of those who were clinically moderately depressed without medication and change their entire life around with no medication. God designed you to work outside, to have sunlight, eat the right kind of food, pursue certain kinds of interests. God did not design us to work behind a computer in a dark room without social interaction. And so I encourage you to build your margin. Do the things that God designed with Adam and Eve, and those things will actually prevent burnout and depression. Okay. Your handout includes a lot of the research on those 6 lifestyles. I highly recommend this particular book. It's you can get it through Amazon.com. It's called The Depression Cure. It'll talk about each of these 6 lifestyles. It will not go into the research like the handout does. This is, I think it's $16 on Amazon.com. And it'll give you the tools that will enable you to implement these 6 lifestyles on your own. Okay, now one more thing. On the front page, on the front table here, there's 2 sign-up sheets. I'm putting together a book, an 18-chapter book on resilience for pastors and missionaries. I got 16 chapters done. If you would like to get a copy of that, which includes this, as well as 6 chapters are on the depression cure. So there's another 12 chapters and other things that will give you resilience to rebound from burnout. If you'd like a free copy of that, simply put your name on one of these sheets here. We'll probably have it published in about June, and I'll get you a free copy of it. Any questions? We're out of time. What questions? Yes?
I got one on the exercise. It said 120, 140 for heart rate. So you go above that, you're seriously exercising.
And that's good.
Does that increase your serotonin?
No, it doesn't increase, but it's just good for you physically. But to have the benefit of getting your body to start producing serotonin, you need to be in the aerobic range, which generally means, like if you're jogging, it's hard to talk. It means you can talk, but it's difficult. That usually is a good rule of thumb type indicator. Yes?
I just wanted to share with everybody, I just took my church to an opportunity to do what's called a Daniel fast.
Yes.
For 21 days, all you do is eat vegetables, fruits, nuts, and natural fried food, And in that 21 days, not only did it help me spiritually, but it really showed me what it is to eat right. And I'd recommend it for anybody going online and just Google up Daniel Fast. It is an awesome thing to do.
Okay, very good. We have gone only through 6 lifestyles. There's actually a lot more on how to be resilient. Those will be in the Resilient book that we have coming out in June. If you'd like that, sign up and I'll make sure you get a free copy of it. What other questions or comments?
I have one.
Yes.
How do you resist using food as your comfort thing, like coffee? And I see those as they comfort me.
Yes, they comfort you.
What can I do instead of
using food abusively? Yeah. And basically it comes down to conscientiousness. If you want to build conscientiousness, ironically, the best way to build conscientiousness is through a biblical exercise called fasting. Fasting takes conscientiousness, doesn't it? And as you exercise that muscle called conscientiousness, you build more of it. Just like building this muscle by exercising it. Fasting is a biblical principle. And as you fast, God changes you. You exercise conscientiousness, and God builds conscientiousness, so then you can do many other things that you couldn't do otherwise. Great question. What other questions do you have? We're running out of time. We're out of time, yes.
Can you get that aerobic up just walking fast on the treadmill?
Yeah, you can get aerobic exercise by walking fast or on a treadmill. But the bottom line is you need to do things that will get that heart rate up. If you're my age, about 120 beats a minute. If you're younger, up to 140 beats a minute. So it depends on your age. And that book, Faith-Based Fitness, will give you tables for your age, the heart rate that you really need for that.
And you need to start low and build up.
Right, you need to start low and build up. Absolutely. Otherwise, you could have a heart attack. And again, if you're going to start an exercise program, I highly recommend checking with your doctor first. Make sure there's something else. There's not, artery blockage, whatever that could really do you in. Okay, well, thank you for coming. And if you'd like more information, please let me know.
Thank you for listening to the 2010 Network Intermission podcast. For more information on the Oregon Ministry Network and our events, please visit our website at oregonag.org.